we are back again today with our perfect punctuation series, and again we are hopefully going to put a stop to all of your confusing punctuation problems. Today we are going to be discussing the semicolon and the colon. Okay, so let's start with the colon, which is this little fella right here. He has a bit of a reputation for baffling many people, but with the right explanation, broken down easily, it doesn't have to be confusing at all. In fact, he only has one major use. It can't be that hard to learn, can it? The colon is used to indicate that the words that follow is an explanation or an elaboration of the words that preceded, so basically the words that came before the little marquees, okay? The colon is nearly always preceded by a complete sentence, although what follows the colon does not have to be a complete sentence, okay? It could be a list or even a single word. I know that sounds complicated, but it's really not that bad. I'm going to show you some examples to hopefully make it easier to understand, okay? She was sure of one thing: she would never be a cop. Okay, that identifies what she is sure of. We found the pub first time. Your directions were perfect. This explains why the pub was easy to find. I suggested a new post, entertainment coordinator. This explains the new post. Okay. Very occasionally, the colon construction will be turned around, with the specifics coming first and the general summary, the explanation, coming after. Frank, James, Leon and Adam, all members of the Queen Tribute Band. Okay, like all inverted constructions, this should be used sparingly and only if really, really needed. Honestly, I rarely, if ever, see the colon used within fiction writing or in a novel of any kind, okay? There never really seems to be a need for it, as most narration comes with descriptive passages that set the scene or move the plot along, and it would be too simplified if the colon was used. The colon and its way of being used for definitions is mostly redundant in fiction. Still, I felt that I should include it for clarification purposes. One point to remember when using a colon or a semicolon is that it should never be preceded by a space. Okay, putting it simply, the colon or the semicolon should come straight after the last letter. And once the semicolon or colon is there, it should never be followed by anything but a space. Never, ever, ever add a hyphen or a dash, despite what you might see elsewhere or you might have learnt in school. Another rule is to never use a colon, a semicolon, or any other mark for that matter at the end of a heading which introduces a new section of document. So, let's summarise. The colon has 4 general uses. The first is when you cite the name of a book, which has both a title and a subtitle. So, book editing, a DIY guide. The second is used when citing passages from a text such as the Bible, so John chapter 3 verse 16. The third is when writing ratios. So female students outnumber males 3-1. And the fourth is the American usage for the time of day. So to 10 p.m. In British English, we would use a full stop. The semicolon, this little dealio here, has only one major use as well, and that is to join 2 complete sentences into a single written sentence when the following conditions are met. So you've got to listen carefully to these conditions, okay? These are important. You would use a semicolon if the 2 sentences are felt to be too closely related to be separated by a full stop, because it might feel like you're basically repeating the same thing, the same sentence again, or something that's got the pretty much very close the same meaning to it. So therefore a semicolon would make it flow a lot better. when there's no connecting word which require a comma, such as and or but. And the special conditions needed for a colon are absent. Okay, simple as that. So here's a famous example. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. The semicolon can always, in principle, be replaced by either a full stop to make it two full sentences, or with the word and. So in theory, Dickens could have written, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Or, it was the best of times and it was the worst of times. So you see, the use of the semicolon suggests that the writer sees the two similar sentences as being more closely related than the average sentence, preferring the semicolon to the word and, as it gives a more vivid sense of relation between the two. Again, remember that the semicolon must be preceded by a complete sentence and followed by a complete sentence. Do not use one otherwise. With the colon, it didn't have to be a full sentence, remember. It could be a list or just one word or some other little bit of explanation. With a semicolon, it has to be a full sentence. If you broke them apart, they could and should make two full sentences in their own right. Otherwise, it's just not cricket. Doesn't work. Okay, that's the rules. I would also use one when I want to control the pace of my writing. Okay, when I want longer sentences and paragraphs to slow the pace of the story. When I feel that smaller, choppier sentences would make the pace faster. So I would possibly use a semicolon to make the sentence longer and the paragraphs longer and just give that sense of flow a little bit more. Here are a few examples of the right and wrong ways to use a semicolon. This was wrong because the second part of the sentence would not make sense on its own. Okay, you could not split the sentence and add either a full stop or the word and have it make sense. Therefore, it was wrong. This sentence could be broken down into two complete sentences or have the word and added and it would still make sense. Therefore, it was correct. In summary, we would use a colon to separate a general statement from its following specifics, i.e. a word, a phrase, a sentence, or a list. And we would use a semicolon to connect two complete sentences not joined by the words and, or, but, yet, or while. These are the same joining words that we use for commas. So basically, two complete sentences that are closely related in meaning. So that's what we've got time for today. I thank you for hanging around and joining with me again. As always, blessed be and happy writing.